Welcome. I'm Dr. Dan Elash, and working with you on this Living Free program. We're calling it Rewriting Your Future in the Time of COVID-19. What does that mean? Well, our past cannot be altered except in our imaginations. What we have said or done can't be undone. On the other hand, our future isn't determined. It remains unknown and unwritten. And the unwritten part is what I want to help you focus on today. Because we can, through our choices, through our deliberate attention, write a script for our futures that are different than what the projected course is now. While we can't control what the world might throw our way, we can exert conscious, deliberate control over how we react to future events. It's our ability to choose how we act from this moment forward that determines the future course of our lives. It's all about the choices you make and your strategy, your vision for what you're trying to accomplish going forward. What we're really talking about is proactively setting up options and opportunities for yourself that help you achieve your life's purpose, your life's goals, your family's purpose, your family's goals. You know, there's a complication in that we often react in the moment, reflexively, without much concern for the long-term impact of any particular choice. It's almost like we go through our lives on automatic pilot. And there's a benefit for that psychologically. We really don't have to stop and think and process everything we do. On automatic pilot, we simply react to events. Indeed, many times we react on instinct or on impulse, just reflexively, other than dealing with things in the moment. Let me give you an example. When we're angry or irritated, we might lash out with something sarcastic or hurtful. What I haven't considered is the irritation may pass pretty quickly. Maybe you'll get over your frustration or your anger in an hour, maybe in an evening, maybe in a day. But the irritation will pass. The heat of the anger will fade, but hurtful words will last forever. The damage that's done by a snide remark, by a cutting put down, by an abusive comment will outlast the emotion that you've just reacted to. There are two postures we can take to the events in our lives. We can be reactive or we can be proactive. Acting on automatic pilot without much forethought, mostly on impulse, is reactive. In a sense, our behavior is structured more by the events that we live through than by our will. Reflexive actions are lazy when you stop to think about it. They take no effort. We just pop out with an activity, an action, a choice based on what's in front of us at the moment. Picture a frog trying to cross a pond, jumping from lily pad to lily pad. The best lily pad in front of me at this moment may not lead me to the best path across the pond. Maybe a less good choice at the moment opens more possibilities, gives me more freedom, allows me to be more successful long term if we have strategy if we're proactively looking at a path across the pond. Impulsive actions rob us of our power to choose. When we say things like, "you made me do that," or "you made me mad," we're really not speaking correctly. I don't mean correctly, I mean accurately. I can't make you do anything. If your spouse can make you be angry, then they could also make you be happy. We don't have that power over other people. We can provoke, we can frustrate, we can push your buttons, but you're in control of how you react to the provocations of your life. Whether you give in to anger, whether you rise above it, whether you let it not affect you, is your choice, ultimately. So it's only true that you've made me mad if I've failed my exercising my power of choice. I worked one time with a guy in jail who was there for domestic violence. And we were talking about what happened. And he was telling me how his spouse, his lady, was really provoked him. That she was so crazy making, she drove him, she made him hit her. And so I asked him to explore that a little bit. I said, let's pretend we're standing out in the yard and she's chewing your butt and you're getting more and more angry, and you grab her shirt and you haul back your fist, and out of the corner of your eye, you see a police car coming around the corner. Would you hit her? And he said, well, no, man, I'm not stupid. I'd wait till the cop went by. Then you have a choice. Then you can control. She didn't make you do anything. You chose how to act. That's true of so many things. Frustrations with our kids, frustrations with our spouses, just irritations when we're bored, when we're unwilling to do what we're asked to do, when it's not comfortable. All of those things lead us to respond reactively. And when that posture becomes habitual, we feel powerless in the face of what happens to us. We really wind up feeling like victims. The guy who was abusing his wife was telling me how he was victimized by her. It doesn't make sense. That sense of powerlessness can ultimately color our perception of ourselves and our perceptions of our power in the world, our ability to make things happen. So I'd like you to think about your own self, where you feel like you're reacting and where you feel like you are steering your life in a direction that you want it to go. In order to do that, and we'll talk about this in a different program in more detail, but in order to really be proactive in life, I'm going to ask you to identify, what's your purpose in life? Why are you here? What do you stand for? What are you about? I'd ask you further, what's the purpose of your marriage? What are you two doing together? What's the purpose of this primary relationship? If it's not well clarified, if it's not well stated, it can be very easy for people to feel like day-to-day events pull them in different directions, making it harder to collaborate, to cooperate, making it easy to feel that somebody's frustrating me by not choosing what I want them to choose. And thirdly, I'd ask you to identify, what's the purpose of your family? What are you about? What do you stand for? Take your name. Who are the Does? John Doe and family. What are you about? What do you want people to think of you? What do you want your reputation in your world to be? How do you want people to admire or recognize you? If you identify those things, then you have a template, an architecture for looking at day-to-day choices and how your choice today leads you on a path to get you where you want to be, that helps you realize and live into your purpose. How you raise your children, how you build and maintain and care for your marriage, and how you become your best self. All of those things are enabled by your understanding the purpose by which you're acting. On the other hand, we always have the power to choose how we react to what happens in our lives. This posture requires self-control and self-discipline. That we take the time to think through our options and the ramifications of the choices that we're going to make, and to make an assessment of both the short-term and the long-term impact of any of those choices. It's like you can say something hurtful that shuts your partner up in an argument, but the petty argument that you just won may be won at the cost of a lot of trust and willingness to be vulnerable with you. It's worth thinking about that your choices in how you treat your spouse affects permanently the nature of your relationship. What we have in COVID is a feeling of a lack of control. What's happening with the world, the economy, our health, our social relationships, our ability to go out, to kick back, to vacation, to travel, all that seems uncertain and fraught with risk. And human beings like the feeling of certainty. They like the feeling that there's predictability and order in your life, in your world, that you're in control. COVID and the impact of that virus on our country, our society, our culture right now has really ripped away a lot of that sense of control, leaving people angry or frustrated or in some ways despairing of their ability to live their lives the way they had planned. The way that you regain that sense of control is by being mindful and deliberate about the choices that you make in reaction to the challenges that are in front of you. The strongest we can move, the most confident we can be in our choices, comes from having a clear sense of purpose. When we have clear goals, we are working to realize them, then we have a sense that we are progressing. We have a sense of moving toward something rather than feeling powerless to affect events and feeling simply like we're being buffeted by the world outside of us. What will my choice do to my family, my spouse, to other relationships? How do you want to be known or regarded as a person? When our desires are clear, our choices become easier and more constructive. I don't mean easier in the sense that we won't have to make hard choices. I mean, clearer and more straightforward in understanding what it's going to take to accomplish what we want to accomplish. It gives us a greater sense of power and control over our lives if we work with discipline and structure to make our choices fit what we say we want to accomplish. Where our strength of will enables us to choose the best path that serves your goals and your values is where you will find your own peace of mind and a sense of power over what happens to you in terms of your ability to create the future you would like to have. Now, there's a gap between our espoused values, what we say we believe, and our lived values, which really mean how we react when no one's watching, what we choose when we're just going about our lives unselfconsciously, day in and day out. There's a gap for all of us, every one of us. The wider the gap, the less credibility one has. When there's a large gap between what people say they believe and how they act, others distrust them. Others have a hard time relying on them. Others discount them. You feel like you cannot count on that person. What they say they will do does not reflect what they will do. What they say they value doesn't reflect what they actually value. And we know that, and we pull away from them. We tend to distance ourselves from them. When your espoused values, what you say you believe, and the choices you make are, when that gap is narrow, when they're fairly well aligned, excuse me, we have people we see as role models, people we admire, people we look up to, we want to emulate. We respect their integrity, their courage, their commitment. Most of us are somewhere in between, and our real goal here is to help you be aware of narrowing that gap, closing the gap between what you say you believe and cherish and value and how you actually act day in and day out. When we are reflexive, the impulse, the emotion of the moment can really work to widen that gap. When we're considered, deliberate, more careful, more thought out, we're much more likely to operate with a narrow gap between what we say we believe and how we act. You know, when we talk about a purpose, what's the purpose of your life? I don't know what it is, but it's something, it isn't something that's assigned to you. It's not something that you have given to you. It's something that you choose. It's something bigger than yourself that you choose to dedicate your life to. What do you want to stand for in this world? How do you want to be regarded? What would you like to leave behind as a legacy? Start by answering these questions for yourself. Then give a hard look at where you're at today in relation to that ultimate vision. If you don't like where you're at, if the gap between how you see yourself and the choices you're making, between how you see yourself as a spouse and how your partner experiences you, if the gap between how you see yourself as a parent and how your children perceive you, is larger than you're comfortable with it being, how do you work the choices you make day in and day out to narrow that gap? It's under your power. It's under your control. You can make a difference if you're grown up, responsible, dutiful about your choices. The only way we're really going to do that is if we have a clear idea of what we stand for, of what we're about. That's the bottom line in terms of your being true to yourself, in terms of you knowing what you want to do and what you want to be, what you want your future to be. The next step, when we identify that, when we look at the gap, is to begin to develop a strategy for how to move closer to the life you want to live. How do you live into your knowledge of what's right, of what works, of what should be the best course of action? You know, you're not the person you used to be. You can stay that way if you want to, but you don't have to. You could grow and carve a new path. You could be a different person. You can choose to react to situations differently from today, from this moment forward. If you want to be a patient person, a more patient person, but your language is, well, I'm not a very patient person, you're carrying your past with you. It's a subtle distinction, but the mindset is you're defining yourself by how you've behaved in the past. And you're presenting yourself in the present as the sum of those past decisions. If you want to change, then from today, you begin to say, I want to show more patience in the decisions I make. I want to show more patience with how I respond to my kids, to my spouse, to my colleagues, to my friends, to the decisions that I make. And that I used to be impatient, but no more. I'm working on it. I'm building the skills. And every day that you are more patient today than you were yesterday, you're distancing yourself from that old you. You're really creating the person you would like to be. You're choosing to act in ways that are like the person you would like to be. The next idea that I want you to consider is that you can leave your baggage behind. We all make mistakes. Hindsight is 20/20. We can regret things that we've done in the past. But if we drag that with us every day, as in, I'm not a very patient person, I'm not a very thoughtful person, I'm not a very kind person, and you beat yourself up about that, you put yourself down, you criticize yourself mentally, internally, you're down on you, then you're dragging that baggage with you. It becomes a life sentence. And what I'm suggesting to you is that you let it go. Is that you give yourself some grace. And it's possible to give yourself that grace, to forgive yourself for the dumb things you did, the bad choices you made, the stupid things you've said, if you're simultaneously committing to make better choices. You can really turn the page. You can really leave the baggage at the curb and begin to build a new set of skills, a new set of psychological muscles for how to deal with the things that affect you, that bother you. Forgiving yourself for not knowing better or for not doing better in the past is a necessary skill for mental health. We aren't prescient. We're not mind readers. We don't know what we don't know. And none of us come into our adulthood with all the tools we need to make perfectly wonderful decisions on every front. No, we learn by trial and error. We learn by making mistakes. We learn by picking ourselves up and saying, wow, I don't want to do that again. To indict ourselves then for having that blind spot doesn't do any good for anyone. Forgiving yourself for being human works if you're committed to learning from those mistakes. By the same token, since you can't undo that mistake, undo that choice, you can only harm yourself by punishing yourself going forward, by carrying those regrets, by letting those regrets depress you, letting those regrets diminish your own worth in your own eyes. Fact is, we're all flawed, flailing, struggling human beings. The positive path forward is really to decide what to do differently, what to choose differently in order to have more of the effect, more of the impact that you want to have on your life as you live it going forward. You have to commit to learning from past mistakes and to consciously do better when those situations arise again in the future. Give yourself some grace while you learn to be better. No one has it all figured out. No one is sort of flawless in dealing with other people. Human beings are too self-centered, preoccupied, unself-aware, misunderstanding, misreading. There are lots of things that are just part of our lives that we have to work through. Excuse me. And when we work through them with integrity, when we work through them by taking responsibility for what I've done and how I wish to do better going forward, we really turn the page. We can leave that baggage behind. We can become more proactive in dealing with what the world throws our way. You have to, through strength of effort, through mindfulness, through making that decision of how to be, how you want to be, become the master of your life. Become the writer, the author of your future, the future choices that you make. Good luck. I know that you can do it. It works better when you practice these skills. When working on mindfulness, working on being self-aware, working on being self-disciplined requires practice. Knowing doesn't lead to change. Knowing opens the door for change. Practice creates change. The example I give people is that it's a lot like lifting weights. If you've ever done curls, bicep curls, where you have a dumbbell in each hand and you raise and lower your arms from the elbow. If I gave you a 1 pound dumbbell and told you to lift it, you could do several of them. If I gave you a 50-pound dumbbell and told you to lift it, fewer people could do as many. If I handed you a 100-pound dumbbell, few people could do any. But the people who could are people who have started at 1 pound and built the muscle to do 2 pounds and built the muscle to do 5 pounds and gradually worked their way up to where they have the strength to handle the tougher challenge, the more stressful situation. The same is true psychologically. The same is true emotionally. It will take practice, and if you're lucky, it will take loving feedback from the people around you to help mark your progress, to help encourage you to keep trying, to help support you while you're building those muscles. By the same token, I want to ask you to be that person for the other people in your life. Can you be a true friend? Can you give honest feedback? Can you give honest support? It's particularly important when you're dealing with your children, because children need a place to live while they're learning to be socialized, while they're learning to be civilized. It takes loving support while they go from that 1 pound dumbbell to the 2 pound dumbbell and working their way up to the social skill capability that you want them to have. They need a place to be safe while they're failing, while they're flailing, while they're trying. And your ability to be the person that offers that grace to them will come way more naturally if you're the kind of person who's willing to offer that kind of grace to yourself. So, from Dr. Dan to you, practice, be mindful, embrace yourself with confidence and love, identify your purpose, and grow into that. Be the person you're capable of being without apology or excuse. So thanks for bearing with me. Appreciate it. And I'll look forward to talking to you the next time we do another of these programs for Living Free.